looking at a live view of the Soyuz MS-13. For now, astronauts Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Alexander Skvortsov are on the International Space Station side of the hatch between this vehicle and the space station, but that won't last for long. Good evening and welcome to the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where the team is preparing now for the undocking of the Soyuz from the space station. That's coming up at 2:18 a.m. Central Time, but the departing crew, expedition crew members that include Expedition 61 crew members, including NASA's record-setting flight engineer Christina Koch, European Space Agency astronaut Commander Luca Parmitano, and Roscosmos flight engineer Alexander Skvortsov, have already said their farewells and are now preparing to close hatches between the two vehicles, the next step on the checklist that will put them on course for return to Earth at 3:12 a.m. Central Time tomorrow. That hatch closure is scheduled for 8:30 p.m. Central Time in just a little under 30 minutes now. But one of the first steps on that checklist took place this morning when Luca Parmitano, Expedition 61 commander, handed over the reins of the space station to the new Expedition 62 commander, Oleg Skripochka, in a change of command ceremony that took place on board the space station at about 7:40 a.m. Central Time. We have some video of that ceremony, and we're going to play that for you next here on NASA TV.
200 days ago, exactly, I was taking command in the same spot, and I promised three things. I spoke of gratitude, I spoke of humility, and service. I know for sure that I have failed many times for the last two, humility and service, and my crew has paid the price for my failures. But for sure, I know that the gratitude that I felt on the first day has only increased during these past 200 days. For each and every one of you have taught me many lessons. Christina, your generosity and resilience in these past 3 expeditions has been incredibly inspiring. Jessica, you represent grit and confidence to me. Drew, you are selfless and an amazing support, and an outstanding friend. Sansanic, your love for your family and for your friends never stops and is always in your eyes. Oleg, your quiet professionalism reminds me of how important it can be to say only the right words at the right time. So 3 words when I started. I would like to add one word that I try not to abuse, and I use very sparingly. That word is pride. And I'm definitely not talking about myself, but I want my crew to feel proud of what they accomplished. There are many people on the ground that are taking counts of what we have done, how many EVAs, how many hours of work, how many experiments, how many days we've spent up here. None of those are important. What is important is what you achieved. You as the crew made all of this possible. It's been your incredible dedication that has made it all possible. And for that, I feel very, very indebted. So my gratitude has only increased tenfolds or more. And with that gratitude in my heart, I would like to hope that we are leaving the space station in a better state than when we arrived. And with that, I would like to wish you all the best in the continuation of your staying here in Expedition 62. Now, Oleg, I give you the symbol of the authority on the space station. The key to the space station is yours. Congratulations, Commander.
Спасибо. Спасибо большое, Лука. Безусловно,
very
для
much,
меня
Luca.
это
Undoubtedly,
большая
for
честь и
me, it
большая
is a great
ответственность быть
honor and a great
командиром такого
responsibility to be
крупнейшего
the
космического объекта,
commander
как
of this
Международная
largest
космическая
space
станция.
object as the International Space Station.
Но я думаю, что опираясь на
However,
командную
I
работу нашего
believe
экипажа, мы
that
успешно
relying
выполним все, что
on
должны будем
work
сделать
of
по
our
программе
crew,
полета,
we're going
по
to
программе наших
successfully accomplish
исследований.
our
Конечно, как
mission
SpaceX-61, мы провели здесь
goals.
больше 4 месяцев
We have been
вместе.
here together as
Это
part
были
of
как и
Expedition
рабочие дни,
61
были
over 4
совместные
months.
праздники.
Those were working days,
Все было
they were
интересно, все
jointly
было очень
celebrated
здорово. И
holidays,
спасибо
everything
большое
was
вам за
very
это,
interesting and we really
за это
enjoyed it.
прекрасное
Thank you
время,
very much
проведенное
for the
вместе.
wonderful time we have
А сейчас мы,
lived and worked on
наш
the
экипаж,
ISS.
желаем вам
And now our
счастливого
crew
и
would like to
безопасного
wish
пути домой.
you successful and safe
Thank you,
return
Luca.
home.
So it's great honor and great responsibility for me to be an International Space Station commander. But I'm sure that based on teamwork, we will successfully perform everything we will have to do according to our flight plan, according to our science program. We spent more than 4 months together as a one crew. It was exciting time. We had weekdays, we had joint holidays. Thank you very much to you for this exciting time. And now we wish you safe and happy journey home. Спасибо.
Спасибо тебе.
That again was this morning's change of command ceremony with Expedition 61 Commander Luca Parmitano handing over keys to the space station, or key rather, to Expedition 62 Commander Oleg Skripochka. Thoughtful words for all the crew members on both sides of that exchange. But now those Expedition 61 crew members are preparing to come home. That hatch closing between the International Space Station and their Soyuz MS-13 should be taking place around 8:30 p.m. Central. So still a few more minutes to go, but we'll be keeping an eye on that. Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, the team that will oversee the night's operations from here in Houston is in place and ready to go. They're led tonight by Flight Director T.J. Kramer with Capcom Leslie Ringo by him. And in Kazakhstan, a number of officials and vehicles are also standing by in preparation for the landing. Cook, Parmitano, and Skvortsov expect to touch down southeast of Zhezkazgan in Kazakhstan at 3:12 a.m. Central. It's 3:12 a.m. Central Time, 3:12 p.m. local time. Several of the 12 Mi-8 helicopters that have been deployed to various areas to await landing are already on their way. 8 are expected at the actual landing site, while 2 more will be ready about 250 miles away in the area where a touchdown would occur if a ballistic entry occurred. And a final 2 helicopters will loiter midway between the 2. We are not, of course, expecting a ballistic entry today, but we are always prepared for one. Aboard the helicopters going to the nominal landing site, several NASA representatives, including Joe Montalbano, who is the Deputy Space Station Program Manager, Megan MacArthur, Chief of the Astronaut Office, and Tricia Mack, NASA's Human Space Flight Program Russia Director, will all be among them. Also deployed for landing, there will be 6 all-terrain vehicles and 3 Antonov airplanes that serve as flying command centers. They'll have direct communication with the crew and will relay those communications back to Moscow. The weather forecast is probably not what the crew would choose for their first exposure to weather in months. It's going to be very cold. The prediction for landing time is 25 degrees Fahrenheit or about -3 degrees Celsius. And unfortunately for those of us watching on the other side of the world, the forecast also calls for cloud coverage. We may not see as much of the video of the capsule making its way down to the ground as we sometimes do. But if you've watched many previous landings, you know that poor weather conditions are not unusual for Soyuz landings. We've seen them take place in the middle of snowstorms, in fact. The landing team will quickly erect a medical tent at the landing site to get the crew out of the weather and keep them as comfortable as possible as they go through their regular post-landing checkouts. Again, here on the ground, everyone's getting into place for not only the 3:12 a.m. Central Time landing, but also the undocking, which is scheduled to take place at 11:50 p.m. Central Time. But before that happens, the on-orbit crew has to get into their vehicles and close hatches between themselves and the rest of the space station. That is scheduled for 8:30 a.m. or p.m. rather, coming up in about 20 minutes from now.
General organization.
At the moment, however, the two crews still have a few minutes left together. Cook, Parmitano, and Skvortsov will be leaving behind their crewmates of the past several months, Roscosmos Commander Oleg Skropochka and NASA flight engineers Jessica Meir and Andrew Morgan. They'll have the space station to themselves until April, when NASA's Chris Cassidy will be launching to the space station, along with Roscosmos cosmonauts Nikolai Tikhonov and Andrei Babkin. With the close of Expedition 61, a lot of new records are being set since her arrival at the space station, with Nick Hague and Alexei Ovchinin on March 14, 2019. Christina Koch will have spent 328 days in space at the time of her landing. That's the longest single space flight for a woman. This mission also puts her at number 2 on the list of longest single space flights by an American, and with just this one flight at number 7 on the list for cumulative time in space by an American. For their part, Parmitano and Skvortsov spent 201 days in space for this mission, but both have been in space before. Parmitano will land today with a total of 367 days in space over 2 missions, giving him the most time of any ESA astronaut. And wrapping up his 3rd space flight, Skvortsov will have a total of 564 days in space, putting him at 15th on the all-time endurance list. We know a lot of people are going to be very excited to see Christina coming home today, and we have gathered a few congratulation messages for her from various people at NASA and outside of NASA as well. We'll be playing those throughout the night, and we're going to kick it off with this one coming in from the Kennedy Space Center.
Hi, Christina. This is JC with the Veggie team. Just want to say it was great, awesome working with you over the past 300 days with the veggie grow outs. We hope you like and enjoy salads when you get back. But again, we just want to say welcome back.
Hi, Christina. I'm Jess, one of the plant scientists on Veggie. It was a pleasure to get to work with you on the Veg04A and B studies. We really appreciate your dedication to the project, and the results that we received from space and here with our ground controls will help us to understand how to grow plants in space better and also know how to grow plants on Earth better. So thank you.
Welcome back. Go Veggie!
Again, we'll be playing several of those throughout tonight's coverage of not only this hatch closure, but also in docking and landing.
Okay, copy.
Hatch closure is still about 15 minutes away if it goes at the set time, and then, of course, undocking coming up after that at 11:50 p.m. with landing scheduled for 3:12 a.m. Getting our first footage of the night now from inside the Russian segment of the space station.
MCC Moscow ISS on Space to Ground 2. Go ahead. I read you loud and clear on Space to Ground 2. And I see you. I request for you, Oleg, when you start the PAO event from MRM, could you please wear the headset just to make sure we avoid the situation when you're not able to copy? Are you talking about the event when we're closing transfer hatches? Yes, when you get all together and make sure you're wearing your headset. So I think, I see, I get it. So we're going to...
Они-то будут явно без наушников, чтобы с кем-то связь поддерживать, и мало ли какая информация поступит, чтобы кто-то был на связи.
Связь в каком канале будем вести?
СГ-2, измена только в СГ-2, поэтому вот так и оставляю связь. И камеру оставляю, и связь оставляю.
Нет, я возьму наушники с ПХО, то есть это будет СМовский пульт абонента.
Давай так, если будет СМовский пульт абонента, тогда СГ-1. Давай мы его сейчас тогда проверим сейчас сразу.
Да, хорошо, примите секунду.
Seeing Oleg Skropochka here inside the Russian segment of the space station, where Soyuz MS-13 will be undocking from the Zvezda module later tonight. Skropochka, of course, will be staying behind as he's now commander of the Expedition 62 crew, but he'll be involved in the work to get the Soyuz ready to leave today with his crewmates Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Alexander Skvortsov on board. Despite this being her first spaceflight, this procedure isn't a new one for Cook. She has seen 12 different vehicles leave the space station in her time there. She saw 3 SpaceX cargo Dragon vehicles come and depart, 3 Russian Progress cargo vehicles, 2 Northrop Grumman Cygnus cargo vehicles, 1 Japanese cargo vehicle, and 3 Soyuz vehicles carrying her previous crewmates home on board them. But this will be her first time to see it from the Soyuz side of the hatch. Once again, when she returns to Earth today, she will have 328 days in space under her belt. That will be the longest single space flight for any female.
I am talking to you from PHO, from the transfer compartment. Okay, sounds great. Agreed. As soon as you start talking during the PO event, please make sure you're wearing your headset so we're able to talk to you. Is it okay? So as soon as the event starts, please put your headset on and call us. Okay, then please tell the guys to start hurrying up. The time is coming. So there are no special speeches planned for the event. It's just nothing mandatory, just for the crew members to summarize that they're all set and ready to go. Okay, copy all. Sounds good. Talk to you later.
Flight control team in Moscow urging the crew members to begin hurrying up with their preparations for today's hatch closure. That's scheduled to take place about 10 minutes from now, so we'll be keeping an eye on the activities, since they can go a little early or late sometimes, depending on the crew's readiness. But again, it's scheduled to take place around 8:30 p.m. Central Time. This, once again, is the latest in the series of steps that will lead the crew to a landing in Kazakhstan at 3:12 a.m. Between now and then, we also have the undocking of the Soyuz from the International Space Station at 11:50 p.m. And then once they've moved away from the space station, they'll perform their deorbit burn at 2:18 a.m. Central Time. Seeing a view here of Alexander Skvortsov inside the hatch that leads to the Soyuz MS-13, where it's docked to the Poisk module on the Russian segment of the space station. Again, we're waiting for he and his crewmates to gather on the other side and close that hatch in preparation for today's undocking. Should be coming up soon now on time for the hatches between Soyuz MS-13 and the International Space Station close. Once again, we'll be looking for Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Alexander Skvortsov to be on the Soyuz side of that hatch, and they'll be leaving behind Andrew Morgan, Jessica Meir, and Oleg Skropochka. That's scheduled to take place at 8:30 p.m. Central Time, which is just about now, and will be the next step on their preparations for a undocking and landing over the course of the night and early morning. They're scheduled to undock from the International Space Station at 11:50 and land in Kazakhstan at 3:12 a.m. Central Time. This once again will wrap up a 328-day stay in space for Christina Koch on her very first mission, putting her at number 1 on length of single space flights for a female, number 7 on all-time endurance list for U.S. astronauts, she will have traveled the equivalent of 291 trips around the moon and from the Earth and back over the course of her stay in space. It's a little different than how many miles that Skvortsov and Parmitano have traveled, since they arrived on a different Soyuz vehicle a few months after Cook arrived at the space station. In all, Cook will have traveled about 139 million miles, compared to about 85 million for Skvortsov and Parmitano. On this visit to the space station, Parmitano and Skvortsov, who arrived in July, will have spent a total of 201 days in space. And it looks like the Expedition 61 crew members are beginning to gather. You've got Christina Koch and Alexander Skvortsov there. And here comes Luca Parmitano. Getting some final farewells from the Expedition 60 crew members who will be staying behind. Saw first Andrew Morgan moving into the screen, and then Jessica Meir, and now Oleg Skropochka. Few final pictures and farewell waves. Our last chance to see these crew members on this side of the hatch for this particular space flight. Next time we see them should be when they land back on Earth in Kazakhstan at 3:12 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning. Still seeing some goodbye waves as they move to close that visiting vehicle hatch. Andrew Morgan and Oleg Skropochka, they're working on the the International Space Station side of the hatch. We saw the Soyuz side hatch closed at 8:34 p.m. Central Time as the space station was flying about 262 miles above the Philippine Sea. Currently just about to skirt around the coast of Japan before reaching the northernmost portion of this orbit around the Earth. And there are the Expedition 62 crew members, newly named, waving to the cameras as they have just bid their crewmates farewell. Christina Koch, Luca Parmitano, and Alexander Skvortsov. They're on the other side of that hatch you see here in the Poisk module on the Russian side of the space station. They closed the hatch on the Soyuz at 8:34 p.m. Central Time.
Calling MCC Moscow, Space to Ground 1. Go ahead and Space to Ground 1. Go ahead, Oleg. Hatches are closed. You probably saw it. Yes, we saw it, and the telemetry confirms that the station hatch is closed, but we don't have the telemetry yet from the Soyuz side. We don't have that coverage yet. Make sure you secure the handles, Oleg, to make sure. Well, the handle is going to be in the accessories bag. Yes, I agree. That's right under the camera. They're telling me now that the Soyuz hatch is also closed, so everything is great. I got the information from the telemetry guys. Okay, copy.
In that conversation, confirming as we saw that the hatch on the Soyuz side and the International Space Station sides are both closed now. Again, the Soyuz hatch, we saw it close at 8:34 p.m. Central Time while the space station was flying about 262 miles above the Philippine Sea. They're now about
We consider the first
263 miles above the coast of Japan at the moment and continuing to head northeast. But with the closure of those Soyuz and space station hatches, that is what we wanted to confirm for this section of our coverage tonight. That will wrap up this part of the night, but we will be back for quite a bit more over the course of the night. We'll return at 11:15 p.m. Central Time for undocking. That is when the Soyuz will actually be moving away from the International Space Station. They've got a lot of leak checks and other activities to get through in preparation for that. So we'll take a break and come back at 11:15 p.m. Central Time for that 11:50 undocking. And then we'll take one more break and come back at 2 a.m. Central Time for the Soyuz landing coverage. They'll be performing their deorbit burn at 2:18 a.m. Central Time. That will be dropping them out of the Earth's orbit and heading them back home to Kazakhstan and putting them on the ground at 3:12 a.m. Central Time or 3:12 p.m. Kazakhstan time for today's landing. All that is coming up here on NASA TV, so stick with us over the course of the evening. Again, we'll be back at 11:15 p.m. for the next segment of our coverage, the undocking show. Hope to see you then. This is Mission Control Houston.